All right. We've got head coach Eric Ramsay following tonight's first round game number two. Eric, thank you for joining us this evening. You've got Andy Greeter and Pierre Nugent on with you. And I am going to give it to Andy to start us off.
Eric, yesterday you talked about lacking a little bit of conviction down the left side, and that's where they hit you with the second and third goals. Why was that a persistent thing for you guys?
Yeah, we anticipated a lot of the threat being on that side, and we weren't wrong in terms of how they selected the players and how they went about their business. And I suppose that's a disappointing thing from our perspective that I could have scripted them starting the game in that way, and we talked a lot about how we would deal with some of those problems, and ultimately we weren't able to do so. And it's a really tough place to come, if not the toughest place to come and play in MLS, and we haven't helped ourselves in any way in the opening stages of that game, which is really frustrating. Having said that, I think if you're to watch the goals back, there are no glaring individual errors. The Seattle, they move the ball really well on that side. They cut through us, particularly on the second goal, in spite of the fact that we've got good numbers. And I think if you were to pause a goal at various points in the phase, you'd feel pretty good about the situation. But they showed some real high level work on that side, quick combinations, real athleticism, real pacing behind, and we couldn't get to grips with it for a while. But I'm sure we'll get on to talking about that. I think how we responded, how we made it a real contest, and how that influences the coming days and the following game that was a really important factor today, and there's a lot of pride in that.
Go for it, Pierre.
Eric, when they made it 3-0, what was the conversation like on the sideline between you and your coaching staff? Did you have it in mind already that you were putting a plan in motion to possibly make changes at that point? And then suddenly when they make it 3-2, how does that change things for you at halftime?
No, the players take a lot of credit there because I don't think anyone at that point would have envisaged us getting back in the game so quickly. And as you rightly say, we're at that point planning for a very different halftime, and certainly we'd have been very constructive in trying to find ways to get back in the game or certainly make it a real contest. And we are fortunate to an extent that the players have dug themselves out of a hole and made it a real game. And that was crucially important given the dynamic over the course of these three games, that we didn't go under. We showed a real grit, resilience, and belief, and found a foothold that made the second half a very even contest. And it would have been uh, a huge blow and a real failing on our part if that game had really got away from us and ended up seeping into the third encounter, which now for me it doesn't. I said to the players at the end that I was really disappointed with how difficult we made it for ourselves, and I'd also stress some of that is on them, some of that is on us as a coaching staff, and how we talked about some of the problems that we might encounter in the build up to the game. And ultimately as a collective, we really need to take accountability for the opening stages of that game. But I give the players all credit for getting themselves back into that, changing the dynamic at halftime, and giving ourselves a platform to go and perform on much more of an even footing in the second half. And with that having been the case, I look forward really positively to Saturday. I think the players will, and that is ultimately, if we weren't going to win the game tonight, that is some consolation.
Eric, how do you get something going in attack? I think Kelvin had, 10 touches, 4 passes. What do you need to do to get something more going forward when you're trying to chase the game?
Yeah, I don't think we chased the game with the level of urgency, quality, precision that we would have hoped. I must say, I think from 60 minutes onwards, and certainly as we made the changes on 75 or so, we were hoping for a real energy, a flurry of chances and momentum, but we couldn't tip the game. I'll stress, and again, this isn't laying excuses in front of my feet or at the players' door. It's a very hard place to come, and they're a very good team at home. They've been beaten once at home all season, and that was by us a couple of months ago. And I would say we were coming into that game in a different place to the place that we're in at the moment. But as I say, I think what we've managed to salvage tonight is something to grab hold of and take forward and build upon. And I know that you'll have a group of players in there that if they could play the game tomorrow, they would. They'll be desperate to right the wrongs of the opening stages, desperate to build on a couple of the moments that we had that lead to the goals and the evenness, I would say, of the play in the second half. So I think once we strip away the real home advantage that you sense here, and we add playing at home in the Allianz to the equation, we'll certainly give ourselves the best chance.
Triantis really was instrumental in getting you back in the game with that goal and late in the first half and in portions early in the second half. He looked like he was the best player out there on the pitch at times. How much has he really just been such a massive influence for you guys on the pitch in such a short period of time?
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic from the goal onwards. Real point to prove. Someone we're learning more and more, aren't we, about him as time goes on? But certainly someone that has that look about him. In wanting to put the team on his back and make something happen and take some real responsibility. And he did that in that moment, showed some real conviction. And then certainly in the opening stage of the second half, showed a real bite and desperation to get us up the pitch in the way he pressed, the way he forced turnovers, the way he carried the ball. And that's exactly what we need. And it's another good performance to add to a string of good performances. And certainly on a personal level, he has real momentum going into that game on Saturday.
We saw you taking the TV copy showed you taking notes when you were down 2-0. What were you trying to come up with at that point?
Oh, we obviously we're playing with what might have been pretty substantial changes at halftime. Had we not been able to find our way back into the game as we did, I think we've done a fairly good job over the course of my time here in making wholesale changes when it's necessary, trying to give games a very different feel in the second half if we don't feel like we're getting what we want. And I think with the players' response and how we then find ourselves going in at halftime, it only felt necessary to make the one. And I think Nico's life was difficult on that side based upon how they played, and we felt in the second half Morris was a better fit from a profile perspective to deal with some of those threats and would allow us to defend those situations slightly differently. And I would say to an extent, we almost forced them to change. I would say in if you watch how it panned out from half time onwards with Morris on the pitch, they have a very different look about them, perhaps having read that situation and the change of profile that we have on that side. So it was an interesting encounter in that sense, and I think they're a team that is really deep across that front line. Lots of variety in the problems that they can pose you, and some real threats off the bench tonight that you've seen. So it's certainly not an easy task to come here and contend with all that. But as I say and have said repeatedly, I think the fact that we have managed to salvage that and can step away with some pride and some positivity from at least showing some resilience, we'll feel far better about what could have been a very difficult situation in the morning.
Oh, Eric, in your opinion, then, what has to be different on Saturday in order for you guys to advance?
Yeah, I think we probably need to take the best of the two games that we've played up until this point. We need to show far more conviction from a defensive perspective that I think we did over the course of probably 75, 80 minutes in the first game. We need to be very, very stingy in that sense and really make sure that we contend with their threats at the top of the pitch. And we need to make sure that when we have chances, we take them when we're ruthless in the way that we did tonight. We had two counter-attacking chances that I think based upon the matchup you'd expect us to have, and you'd want to really take advantage of those moments. I don't think I would have been amazed tonight if it was one of those games where we have chance after chance after chance. I don't think they've had a game like that all season here. But when we had chances tonight, we were ruthless. And I think if you combine the best of today and the best of game one, and you can roll it into a performance full of energy and competitiveness that draws on the crowd and the atmosphere and the energy that you hope to create at Allianz, then we'll have a really fighting chance. And that's all I think we can ask for. That we feel great going into the game. We really back ourselves and we go there with a real point to prove, and we do what they've done tonight, which is certainly make the most of an atmosphere that was well and truly in their favour.
We saw Diaz limp off. What's going on with him? And is anybody else dealing with anything?
No, I think largely everyone came through well. I think Jeff just a matter of cramp. So fingers crossed he shapes up okay come Tuesday, Wednesday.
Eric, when you're looking at that fourth goal on replay, does Hassani need to do a better job of closing space quicker there? Or how did you view that fourth goal?
Yeah, I think the context to it is, of course, at that moment, we sort of take some liberties as a couple of players at the top of the pitch that gamble on the ball bouncing in our favour, and we don't nearly have the numbers around the ball that I would expect if the game was at a different stage. And I think you can understand that to an extent. And as a consequence of that, we become very stretched. And Carlos finds himself in open water against Rothrock, who is really dangerous in those situations. And I know we probably don't deal with what follows as well as we could, but I think by that point we'd made changes with a view of trying to force a little bit of chaos in the game, trying to open the game up, and unfortunately that wasn't the case, and ultimately we paid the price. But I think by that point it was all or nothing on a couple of gambles for the front players, and unfortunately we came out on the wrong side of that.
All right, we got to the time for just one more question, Andy.
No, that works for me. I'm good.
Pierre, all good on your end?
I'm good. Thank you, Eric.
Great.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank
See you
you,
soon.
Eric. Safe
Bye bye.
travels back home.
Thank you.